We've heard what Britain's businesses make of the current situation, but what are the people of Britain and indeed the European Union making of the Brexit process? Has it all rather taken a back seat to concerns over COVID-19? Well, here to answer those and other questions is the eminent British political scientist, Sir John Curtice. Sir John, it's been 4 years now since the referendum. What are the polls showing about people's attitudes towards the EU now the UK has officially left?
Well, the honest truth is that it doesn't look as though a great deal has changed. Though that said, it's not clear that necessarily that we still have a majority in favour of leaving in the way that we did in the referendum in June 2016. Essentially, for much of the period up to and leading to the day in which we eventually left the European Union on January 31st this year, the polls have pretty consistently been saying that rather than being a small lead for leave, there was a small lead for remain. Not in truth because Leave voters have particularly changed their minds. Actually, the evidence is that somewhere between 85 and 90% of both Remain and of Leave voters were saying, I'd vote exactly the same way again. But there was, of course, another third group, and it was the group of people who didn't vote in June 2016, some of whom were too young to vote. And certainly, if we are to believe the opinion polls, that group became markedly rather more pro-Remain during the course of that 4-year period.
So if attitudes haven't changed that much towards but stay or leave, have there been any changes in attitudes towards Brexit negotiations?
Well, the crucial there, of course, is whether or not the United Kingdom should indeed be insisting that the talks should be all signed up and dusted and the United Kingdom finally fully leave the single market and the customs union at the end of this year, which is what the UK has had in mind, or whether or not, because of the coronavirus pandemic, it should be seeking an extension, not least because certainly earlier this year the talks were slowed up, indeed halted, by the pandemic, because both Michel Barnier, the EU's chief negotiator, and David Frost, who is responsible for leading the technical side of the UK negotiations, both of whom caught, or at least are thought to have caught, COVID-19, and the talks had to be stopped. And in truth, they are now only going on via Zoom. They are not going face-to-face in London and Brussels, and that obviously constrains them. When the public are asked about this, it depends a bit on how you ask them. If you say explicitly to them, look, you know, coronavirus is going on, it slowed up the talks, you know, should we extend beyond the end of December, given that fact, you tend to get clear majorities in favour of saying we should extend, though even then, amongst Leave voters, still more people saying don't extend than we should extend, and that's a crucial constituency for the UK government. If you, on the other hand, don't mention coronavirus and simply say to people, should we extend or should we get out at the end of December, come what may, then basically the Remain-Leave split is fully replicated. Virtually all Leave voters will say, no, we shouldn't extend. Virtually all Remain voters will say we should. And we end up with a position that's not very far from 50-50. But given that this UK government, this Conservative government, is above all dependent on those people who voted Leave, it is their views that matter.
Boris Johnson certainly isn't as popular as he was in December. Will that have an impact on his bargaining position, his bargaining abilities?
I think all that one can say is that perhaps almost inevitably, so far as the public's confidence in the way in which the United Kingdom is approaching the Brexit negotiations is concerned, perhaps almost inevitably, some of the doubts about the competence of this government that seem to have crept into public opinion over the coronavirus handling also now seems to have begun to affect attitudes towards how the government is handling Brexit. Now, it's still the case that the public has more confidence in this government's handling of Brexit than they had in Theresa May's government, because Theresa May ended up losing the confidence of both Remain and Leave voters. But the doubts, according to the polling, are beginning to creep back in. Now, whether or not that makes much difference to the UK's position in the negotiations, I'm not sure, but it certainly puts a bit more pressure on the United Kingdom government to deliver.
Are people caring? Do they worry about a deal or no deal?
The truth is, in most of the last 4 years, Brexit was the top of people's concerns, and many a Leave voter was willing to contemplate no deal, but a substantial minority were not, and most Remain voters did not want. So certainly no deal was an important aspect of the debate, and part of the debate of a Brexit issue that was dominating our politics. Coronavirus knocked it off that perch. Very little discussion for weeks. But new polling that just come out just today suggests that while it's still true that the health and the pandemic and the economy are still the principal concerns of the public, Brexit is creeping back up the level of public concern. And I think although undoubtedly quite a substantial minority of Leave voters would be happy to leave the European Union without a deal, it's not. I think there's probably a non-trivial minority who would not. Most Remain voters would not. And certainly, if the United Kingdom were to leave without a deal, the United Kingdom would certainly be taking quite a risk. Now, maybe in the end things will turn out fine. That's what they claim will happen. But if they don't turn out fine, then certainly the United Kingdom could well find itself, government could find itself the object of quite considerable criticism.
So, John Curtice, many thanks to you for joining us here on The Agenda.